And now, turning to our program, please welcome James Madlin, CEO, Miller Communications, Inc., to introduce our speaker. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Rima Alaily. Rima is Corporate Vice President and General Counsel for Infrastructure Legal Affairs at Microsoft. And I do have to refer to my notes because there's a lot of words in that title. In her role, Rima leads the global team that supports Microsoft's cloud and AI infrastructure. And that encompasses everything from the land acquisition related to that to the power acquisition and the development of data centers. Her work really sits at the intersection of key areas like technology, sustainability, and global policy, and she's responsible for helping guide Microsoft through these complex regulatory and business challenges. Here in Wisconsin, this work has been particularly meaningful. We are seeing the impacts of that as Microsoft brings billions of dollars of investment to our state. About 30 minutes south of here, we see this investment taking place in Racine County at the major data center complex that's taking place, campus that is being built right now in Mount Pleasant. In January, Microsoft announced its Community First AI infrastructure plan, which Rima will talk about today, which outlines the company's data center commitments, including really important priorities, ensuring that Microsoft pays its own way to ensure that local residents are not burdened by any of the infrastructure investment that's taking place, and making sure that these are structured in a way that our communities all benefit from lasting economic, workforce, and environmental benefits. About 20 minutes or 10 minutes from here on the UW-Milwaukee campus, Microsoft is partnering with UWM on the nation's first manufacturing-focused AI co-innovation lab. And this is creating opportunities to connect area businesses and manufacturers with AI experts and tools to accelerate their growth. We're grateful to have Rima here today to share more about Microsoft's investment here in Wisconsin. Join me in welcoming Rima.
Thank you, James. That was a lovely introduction. I hope I can live up to that. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for having me here today to be able to share with you what it is that Microsoft is doing here in Wisconsin and how we think about data center development. It is a real honor to be with you. I've long admired the Rotary Club, not just for what you do, but quite frankly, how you do it. The Rotary represents a belief that leadership comes with responsibility and that service is most meaningful when it is rooted in community. For more than 110 years, the Rotary Club of Milwaukee has invested in the kind of infrastructure that makes communities work, not just today, but frankly, for generations. Whether it's helping to establish the Better Business Bureau, revitalizing the waterfront, or creating institutions that feed families and educate children, Rotary has always understood that strong communities don't happen by accident. They're built deliberately. That ethos resonates. At Microsoft, our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And like Rotarians, our focus is on improving the lives of others, albeit through technology. I began my career more than 18 years ago at Microsoft, and though I have long called Seattle home, my roots are actually here in Wisconsin. I grew up in Appleton, just north of this city, and my extended family still calls Wisconsin our home. And although I reveled in the Seahawks' victory on Sunday, the Packers still remain my #1 football team. But more importantly, this state shaped my values and my sense of what community looks like at its best. And so it's especially meaningful to return and talk with you today about the promise and the responsibility of the AI era and what it can mean for a place that I remain deeply connected to. When people talk about AI, they often focus on the technology itself. What does it mean for our future? But what gets less attention, and frankly is more important and consequential for the here and the now, is the infrastructure that underlies it. At its most basic level, a data center is the physical backbone of the digital world. Data centers are large, special purpose-built structures filled with high-powered computers that are networked together. Globally, there are roughly around 11 to 12,000 operational data centers, and collectively, they make the internet and the cloud possible. If you use the internet, if you use a personal computer or you use a mobile phone, you are connecting to and relying on hundreds of data centers every day. We use data centers when we check the weather forecast, when we make payments on our local banking app, when we use email, we use social media, we shop online, or we schedule an Uber ride across the town. Data centers are also essential to modern businesses, community services, and government operations. It's hard, quite frankly, to imagine a profession or a job that does not depend, at least in part, on data centers. They power our clinics and hospitals, our schools and universities. They enable communications, manufacturing, banks and financial institutions, and our cities and towns. Microsoft operates more than 400 data centers worldwide. Now, some of that capacity goes to our own services. So think about Microsoft 365, or Bing, our search engine, or Xbox, our gaming platform. But quite frankly, much of that capacity is made available for our customers, empowering them to build and operate their own services. So for example, a healthcare system may choose to run their electronic healthcare records on Azure, our cloud service. Or a bank may choose to develop and operate its online consumer banking portal on that same cloud service. Now, data centers are not new. We built our first data center actually in 2007 in Washington State. But what is new is AI. And AI requires significantly more computing power than what data centers delivered in the past. That means we need more and we need bigger data centers. The demand for AI is what is driving a boom in data center development in the United States and, quite frankly, all over the world. And while big tech companies are incorporating AI into their products and services, the demand for the technology is also coming from our customers. The data center boom represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity for Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin has always understood how to build things. For generations, this state has been a manufacturing powerhouse. And AI infrastructure, in many respects, is manufacturing for the 21st century. Data centers are physical, capital-intensive facilities that are built by construction workers, electricians, pipe fitters, iron workers, carpenters, operators, and more. They require fabricated steel, specialized electrical equipment, HVAC systems, chillers, and generators, a supply chain that is anchored in this state. They are operated by engineers, technicians, and security personnel that live in our communities. In other words, this work plays directly to Wisconsin's historic strengths. If Wisconsin helps build that foundation, Wisconsin helps shape what comes next. And groups like Rotary matter to this moment because they bring together leaders who understand that progress and responsibility go hand in hand. It is an opportunity that we have to get right together. So what is Microsoft doing in Wisconsin? Well, James gave you a little bit of an overview. I'm going to dive down a little bit more deeply. We're making a multi-billion-dollar investment in building data centers in the state. So far, we've invested $7.3 billion, and I have no doubt that it will continue to grow. Our first data center, announced in May of 2024, is expected to be completed and will become operational later this year, and that is down on our campus in Mount Pleasant. Our second data center on the site immediately adjacent to the first is under construction, and we expect that to be operational in 2027. 2 weeks ago, we submitted preliminary plans for an expansion project on land just adjacent to our current construction site. That expansion represents 15 data centers across 2 campuses and was approved by the Mount Pleasant Village Board on Monday, January 26th. And we look forward to getting started on the first part of that expansion later this year. We also own land in Mount Pleasant and land in Kenosha that we've purchased for the purpose of data center development. We don't have an immediate development plan for either of those areas at this time, but we are here for the long haul. That being said, we understand that none of this work or its benefits can happen without trust. Building and sustaining trust means listening and responding to the concerns raised by the communities where we are building. And infrastructure build-outs only progress when communities conclude that the gains outweigh the costs. And while we've enjoyed strong support in Mount Pleasant, and quite frankly in communities across the state, we are not deaf to the hard questions that are being asked of data center developers. People are legitimately asking, what does this development mean for my electricity prices? How will it impact the water supply? Whether the jobs that are being created are real and meaningful. Those questions and those concerns help to forge the blueprint of a national commitment that our president and fellow Wisconsinite Brad Smith announced on behalf of Microsoft in early January. Our Community First AI Infrastructure Initiative is rooted in a straightforward principle. When we build at scale, we have a responsibility to strengthen the communities where that infrastructure lives. The initiative makes 5 bold commitments around electricity, water, jobs, taxes, and skilling. We'll pay our way to ensure our data centers don't increase your electricity prices. We'll minimize our water use and replenish more of the water than we use. We'll create jobs for local residents. We'll add to the tax base for local hospitals, schools, parks, and libraries. We'll strengthen communities by investing in local AI training and nonprofits. And so I want to share a bit about what each of these commitments mean here in Wisconsin. Electricity prices are increasing across the nation for a variety of reasons, and driven in large part by the growing electrification of our economy. And we want to make sure that our data centers do not contribute to those price increases for residential customers. Now, data centers require a lot of electricity. There's no way to get around that. And in fact, we expect that we will need about 2 gigawatts of power once our data center campuses are fully built out in Mount Pleasant in the years to come. Now, rate structures don't automatically ensure that residential customers are protected from the costs that are necessary to build out energy generation and transmission. And so we are actively engaged to support a special electricity rate, a very large customer tariff, under review now by the Public Service Commission. That tariff is designed to ensure that the costs of serving large load customers like our data centers are segregated and they are not shifted to residential customers. In addition, we are working to add carbon-free energy onto the regional grid, supporting the development of a 250 megawatt solar farm down in Portage County. Now, in addition to electricity, the concern we hear most frequently is about water usage. And many wonder, did we choose to build in Wisconsin because of its proximity to Lake Michigan? Will we drain the lake? And I can assure you that the answer is an emphatic no. The data centers that we're building in Mount Pleasant are designed to be water efficient. They rely on an innovative closed loop system. That system, a system of pipes that runs through the data center, is filled once, and the water is recirculated continuously to cool the servers in the data center. And in fact, most of the water usage on our data center campus will be as similar as what we see in an office building. We'll use water primarily for on-site restrooms, kitchens, and sanitation. Our Mount Pleasant data center is permitted to use up to 2.8 million gallons of water per year. Now that sounds like a lot, but in fact, it is roughly the equivalent of 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools annually. Building a data center requires thousands of jobs for skilled tradespeople. Electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, carpenters, iron workers, concrete crews, and equipment operators. These are the type of projects that tradespeople build a career on. Nearly 10,000 workers have already helped to build our first data center. That translates into roughly about 2,000 union and skilled workers on site daily. And because we're building multiple data centers on the site, we expect and hope that those skilled tradespeople will transition from one project to the next, building a career in Racine County. Once operational, we expect to employ 500 full-time employees at our first facility, probably around 800 total when the second facility becomes operational, and then more as we continue to expand. We've already hired 375 employees, many from the local region, and have partnered with Gateway Technical College to establish a data center academy in Racine. That ensures that local residents are trained and certified to take advantage of the opportunities that are offered. What is often overlooked when we talk about jobs and data centers is the indirect impact of data center development on the supply chain that runs through dozens of companies and manufacturers in this state. They are growing and they are expanding, hiring new employees to serve the demands of the data center growth. Probably one of the most tangible benefits of data center development is the property tax revenue that flows from its operations. And although our first data center is not yet complete, we're already the largest taxpayer in Racine County. And we expect the revenues from our property taxes to continue to rise as we add additional buildings and our data centers come online over time. We know that property tax revenue from data centers can be transformative for local communities. Property taxes in Quincy, Washington, which is just outside of Seattle, have tripled in 2 decades as we have built data centers there for more than 20 years. That has enabled this small rural community to invest in a state-of-the-art high school, which you can see on this slide, and a new medical center to serve the region. Now, a big part of what Microsoft does is invest in community and invest in particular in AI skilling. That is making sure that the workforce of today is prepared for the demands of tomorrow. And we've taken that to heart here in Wisconsin, partnering with more than 40 community organizations, reaching, engaging, and training thousands of individuals in the state to build the skills and capabilities they will need as AI transforms our economy. In Milwaukee, as James mentioned, we partnered with the University of Wisconsin, Titletown Tech, and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation to offer an AI co-innovation lab. The lab provides local manufacturers with 1-week hands-on support for free to help them tap into AI to transform their business processes. We've already had more than 30 companies run through our lab this past year and are expecting to double that number in the coming year. Alongside workforce development, we've also funded more than 20 prairie and wetland restoration projects in Racine and Kenosha counties, supporting biodiversity, water health, and environmental resilience. Microsoft is committed to ensuring that Wisconsin remains a center of excellence in the growing AI economy. For us, success is simple and measurable. Wisconsin is stronger because we are here. We're proud to invest in Wisconsin. We take seriously the trust that comes with that investment. This is long-term work, and we are just getting started. As we stand here today, this building is a powerful reminder of how Wisconsin approaches infrastructure, with respect for the past and responsibility for the future. Microsoft's data centers reflect that same ethic. They're not just about technology. They're about long-term investment, good jobs, and strengthening the communities they serve. And just as this War Memorial Center stands as a place of service, gathering, and renewal, our AI infrastructure is meant to be a shared asset, one that helps Wisconsin continue to lead, build, and thrive in what comes next. Personally, I'm excited for the work ahead that we can do together. So thank you again so much for having me here. And I'm happy to answer questions if any of you have them.
Thank you, Rima. Welcome back to Wisconsin. As Kent said, I'm the sergeant at arms for questions. I like to smile, but I can also snarl, so don't test me. If it's not concise, you'll hear from us. We welcome your questions. If it doesn't start with who, what, when, why, or how, it's not a question, all right? It's an opinion. So here we go. Jeff, it's interesting. Here we go.
Congratulations on a great talk. I heard you at Madison, and you were super there, too.
Oh, thank you.
I ask AI, are progressives generally against big data centers? Progressives, as in political. The answer, yes. In the last week or so, the Cap Times came out against data centers, asking for a moratorium. We have two leading candidates for governor who are progressives and probably have an opinion on that. It's possible that they would come into an alliance that would put a moratorium on data centers. Thank you. What are your thoughts on this?
That wasn't concise, but for you, we'll give it a pass.
I appreciate the question. Look, communities obviously are empowered to make the choices that they want to make. I think what we would love to see is that we have an opportunity to engage in conversation about what a data center might mean for that community before we stop it altogether, right? So I would love to have the discussion be not a question about are you for or are you against data centers, but really how do we bring data centers here and how do we do that in a responsible way?
Thank you. My name is Fred. So you introduced a new unit of measurement, or your industry has, and its measurement is data center. So I don't know what that means, how many square feet of building, how many acres of land. You talk about a 15 data center expansion coming up, and when people are upset about one, if you multiply it by 15, people may get exponentially more concerned. So that's, a question is, what does that unit of measurement mean? And then your investment numbers, are they just the real property, or are they including the equipment as well? And then I noticed on your map, there are no data centers in Canada. Why is that?
We actually do have a lot of data centers in Canada. But I'm not sure what exactly the question in terms of what is a data center? Well, sure, what is a data center? So when we think about a data center, it is a single building. And oftentimes we have a data center campus, which encompasses multiple buildings that are designed to work together and operate as a single kind of facility. Where we are building in Mount Pleasant, it is entirely contained on the site that was formerly dedicated to Foxconn. And so we'll be building kind of within that perimeter. Does that answer? No, it's not. That will be all, I think we're up to 17. If we are at full build out, it'll be 17 data centers contained within that piece of land. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. Our investment number includes all the costs that are associated with building a data center. And so yes, it does include the equipment that needs to go inside and power that data center. And that includes servers and networking equipment, electrical, chillers, so on and so forth. Absolutely. That is correct.
You can get back in line if you want.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Szynski with the Wisconsin Policy Forum, and my question was drafted by our research team yesterday.
Okay.
You've mentioned Wisconsin's manufacturing history and proximity to fresh water. What other factors does Microsoft consider for site selection, and how does southeastern Wisconsin meet those?
Absolutely, and actually, proximity to fresh water was not one of the site selection criteria, just to be clear about that. As we think about where we were going to locate, here. Is that your question? Why do we choose Wisconsin? As we think about where we're going to locate, I think there was a unique opportunity here in Wisconsin where we felt like there was the land that was available and had the power and the network and fiber infrastructure that would be appropriate and necessary for us to build here. And of course, with the Foxconn site being available, it was just a great opportunity to make use of that property. Thanks.
Good afternoon, I'm Pat Cronin. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Pat.
Something that I've heard about but don't know much about, maybe you can comment on it, give us some insights. Apparently there's some discussion about data centers using or developing into using micro nuclear reactors as sources of power.
Yes, there's a lot of discussion about whether small modular reactors could be used for data center power. That's technology that is still, I think, in development. I'm not actually aware of any data center that's been able to actually deploy small modular reactors in order to power them. So I think it's still emerging technology.
Hi, Jackie Frederick. I think we walked in together.
Hi, Jackie.
How will your data centers and your presence in our state grow our ability to expand research throughout our universities? And what sort of additional high-tech could we have based on the innovation? And I know we have an innovation lab with you, but even beyond that.
Well, I mean, one thing I can certainly point to is we've recently launched a partnership with the University of Wisconsin in Madison around quantum computers and a program and a platform to advance that research and development. And I do think one of the things that has become when we are in a state, when we're making the kind of investment that we're making, a lot flows from that. I mean, we are looking for opportunities to be engaged with the community. That includes research and development, working with local schools and universities, and finding opportunities that we can continue to put our technology to work for those in the state.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Draper. Thank you for speaking with us today.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. My question is, how do you measure the satisfaction of communities that are hosting data centers, and can you provide references?
Well, I think I can certainly provide some references, but ultimately at the end of the day, if we continue to have permission to operate and to grow, that is, in my mind, the ultimate measurement of success. We do want to make sure that our communities are thriving where we are, and as I look at a community like Quincy, Washington, where we have lots of champions, where we've seen the visible signs of the benefits of development in the terms of new high schools, new medical centers. I think one other statistic from Quincy that I just found absolutely astounding is that in the 2 decades since the data center development has been there, their poverty rate has been cut by 1/3. I mean, that is remarkable. And that is because people have the opportunity to work. And so to me, those are the kinds of signs of success that I would be looking for.
Hello, my name is Hans Weisgerber. It's a pretty basic question, but I think it kind of ties into the root of where people's anxiety about data centers comes from. And it's in your slides, you indicate that you have a mission of not causing the average ratepayer's expenses to go up. But how do you actually stop We Energies from raising our rates, or what does that interaction look like as you consume power and as infrastructure is required and as you grow this data center? How do you protect the average ratepayer from rate increases? Do you have any real ability to do that?
Well, we do have some ability to do that, right? We pay for the build out of certain electrical infrastructure. So think, for example, the substations that serve our data centers, transmission lines that are necessary. We also work with We Energies and with the Public Service Commission around how they're going to design their rate structure and their tariff. And right now we're supporting the tariff, the very large customer tariff that is before the Public Service Commission, which really seeks to kind of segregate those costs and assign them to the data centers and to the large load customers. Now, you're right, ultimately the Public Service Commission needs to make that decision, but that is what we are advocating for and trying to push for as much as possible, that those costs are borne by us and not by residential customers.
Hi, I'm Avi Lank.
Hi.
Hi, is any of your, you were talking about property taxes, is any of that going to a tax incremental financing district? And if so, how long will it be before the money can be used for more general local purposes? And secondly, I'm curious whether there's been any thought to trying to find a way to use the heat that these centers produce for anything than just going up into the environment.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate
So-
the presentation.
Oh, thank you. No, there is a tax increment district down in Mount Pleasant that was established for Foxconn originally that we are inheriting, I guess, in some sense. Ultimately, how long that lasts depends on the decisions that the Village of Mount Pleasant makes about how they want to direct the property tax revenue. So that's not really for me to say. With respect to waste, they call it waste heat recovery is what it is. It's very popular in Europe where they have systems set up in order to take that waste heat off the data centers and actually pipe it into and use it in the communities. We participate where that infrastructure is available. So we would love to be able to do it here in the United States, but quite frankly, most communities here have not invested in building out the infrastructure that's necessary to actually take that waste heat off of the data centers.
Hi, I'm Bill Lynch. What chemicals are used in your closed loop system? What are the environmental impacts of their use on air and water and such?
So I know that there are some chemicals that are added to the water in order to help with the system to stay pristine, I would say. I don't know exactly what those chemicals are. Happy to kind of find out, and one of my colleagues here actually can probably answer that question more precisely for you. One thing I can tell you is that water, once we load the systems, we expect it to stay in the system for about 6 years. So it's not something that we're flushing on a regular basis. And whenever that water does come out, it is something that would be treated before it is returned to for general use.
Hello, I'm Janine Najib. Thank you for speaking with us today. There have been quite a few reports and investigations, especially through a lot of employee activism at Microsoft, that have implicated Microsoft for misuse of surveillance and data storage. What I'd like to know is what protections are going to be there and how you're going to allow the community and employees to be aware of your tactics.
So I'm sorry, are you wondering about what are the protections that we have around how our technology is being used? Is that
right? And to make it transparent so that employees and the community has confidence in that.
Sure. So we do have terms of use in terms of what we expect our customers to and limits on how they can use our technology. Mass surveillance is not something that we allow our systems to be used for. Now, of course, we do need to protect the privacy of our customers, and so we do expect that they are ultimately going to respect those terms of service. And when we find out that they are not, we will take action, and we have in the past.
Thank you for being here. My name is Dan Nelson. Will the data centers in space, as others like XAI and several Chinese companies and the government in China are pursuing, make terrestrial data centers obsolete? And if so, when? And what do you do with all the structures in Wisconsin as a result?
That's a fantastic question, and I have no idea. We are not investing in data centers in space. God bless Elon and his efforts to do that. The one thing I do know is, as a company with a 50-year history, when we make investments, we tend to stick around. We've done that in Quincy, Washington. We've done that in Des Moines, Iowa, and all around the country and around the world. And so we're here for the long haul.
Hi there. Thanks so much for your presentation.
Hi.
My name is Dave Fraser. My question regards the sort of aftermath of all the investment in AI at this point, right? We're seeing the industry grow rampantly as a result of, some would say, overinvestment. We're also seeing a lot of competition between competing firms. I'm just wondering what happens in the event of an economic downturn driven by this investment, or in the case where Microsoft is outcompeted. Who's stuck with the bill if, investment doesn't continue to grow apace at its current rate?
So I don't have a crystal ball to predict what's going to happen with AI. What I can tell you is, much of the same thing that I shared with the last questioner. Look, we're in this for the long haul. We're making large investments. They are based on customer demand and what we are hearing from our customers in terms of what they need. We make these commitments in a very thoughtful and planful way. It is in part why we don't go and build all 17 data centers at once, but we try we do it in a very structured and careful and thoughtful way.
Hi, Rima. My name is Alex Zamora. And kind of in line with these same questions, exponential growth in data and AI and technology, period. Are there any thoughts as to when these current facilities would not be able to keep up with the demand or would need to be expanded or become obsolete?
I'm trying to think about the right way to answer your question. So we don't look at these data centers as handling all of the capacity that we have. As I said, we have over 400 data centers around the world, and so they are part of that network. We don't actually foresee data centers becoming obsolete. Quite frankly, when we need to upgrade our data centers, either by bringing in more of the latest advanced technology, we do that right in site. We have an ability to retrofit data centers. We've done that in the past to continue to keep them current. These are large investments that we're making, and we don't intend to and don't want to be walking away from them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tom Nujak. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. You talked about hundreds of jobs at each of these data centers. Could you give us a sense of what kind of jobs these are, what's the average salary, and what kind of education is going to be required for the people working there?
Yeah, I think just at a very basic level, I think you have, there's some number of engineers that need to be employed at the data center. That's both mechanical and electrical engineers. We have operations and technicians who are skilled in working in a critical environment. And then we also have security personnel, and I'm sure there's some additional personnel or categories that I'm overlooking, but those I think of as kind of the three main groups. One of the great things I think about data centers and the skilling that's required is these are jobs that somebody who has completed a community college, for example, or a training program at a community college can be eligible for. And it can be the start of a career, an on-ramp, quite frankly, into technology and the technology industry. It can also be, and one thing that I've come to understand as well is data center technicians become a very sought after or recruited for other places. So if you know how to work in a data center, it's a very regimented place. It requires careful planning, adherence to procedure. The amount of resilience and operational excellence that has to go on to keep that data center up and running 24/7, that work builds skills and capabilities in the employees that then make them good candidates for jobs in a whole lot of other industries. So it is a great on-ramp, I think, for individuals with a high school degree who want to grow a career, not just in technology, but even more broadly. In terms of the average salary, I'll have to defer. I don't know off the top of my head, but I know they are good salary jobs.
Fred is taking me up on the offer to get back in line. Oh, I rue the day.
Oh, come on. So I guess I have to go back to looking at your slide. And again, under jobs, you talk about the first data center will employ 500 people, expect around 800 for the second data center. But considering that that's a 17 data center site, are we talking about 4,000 employees? Or are we talking about 8,000 employees? The numbers don't scale, and they're not very easily addressed. And then on the real estate side, with, I haven't looked at the TIF documents for your data centers or other people's campuses, but I think there's a lot of sense of that $5 billion investment is only $1 million in taxable increment, and therefore there are some people who are concerned about the data center campus supporting in the incremental way.
So I can assure you it's more than $1 million. In terms of the jobs, so we think there's about 500 that we're going to need for our first data center. We'll add another 300 for the second, right? So that's 800 inclusive of the two together. I think there's probably some efficiencies that we gain. You know, you don't need to hire, you know, if you've got a security person they can be for the entire campus, not just one. We don't need one for each single data center. Right, so there are some efficiencies that will happen as we have more data centers are brought online. I don't know what the entire ramp is for hiring across all of those data centers and what the final numbers will ultimately be, but I do expect we'll start to get into the thousands very quickly.
Well, that's the last question, but I'm going to ask the final one, and admittedly, it'll be the hardest hitting. When you get back to Appleton, are you more prone to visit Cleo's Brown Beam or the Wooden Nickel?
I would probably say Cleo's. I believe it's the dirty snowball there that, yep, it was a good test, good test.
Thank you, Rima.
Thank you very much.